Hey everyone, today we are going to unpack something huge, but honestly a little misunderstood, the R&D tax credit. We're calling this the innovator's paycheck because when you get it right, that's exactly what it feels like. So let's just dive right in. So let me just start with a question for you. What if? What if you could get paid back for just trying to solve a really tough problem? I mean, even if you didn't quite get there in the end. It sounds kind of too good to be true, right? But that's the core idea we're going to get into today. Well, the answer to that question is the U.S. R&D tax credit. At its heart, it's a government incentive, plain and simple. It's designed to reward companies for spending their time and money on innovation right here in the U.S. It's all about pushing forward, developing those new or improved products and processes. So how do you actually know if the work you're doing qualifies? Well, there's this kind of secret handshake you need to know. The IRS calls it the four-part test, and every single thing you claim has to meet all four criteria. Let's break down the moves. Here they are, the four big hurdles every project has to clear. I know, it looks like a lot of jargon, but trust me, the ideas behind them are actually pretty straightforward. We're going to walk through each one step by step. First up is the permitted purpose. All this really means is that your goal has to be about making something new or making something that already exists better. We're talking improvements to how it functions, its performance, its reliability. For instance, say there's a company, Innovate Co., and they're trying to make their software platform faster. That fits the bill perfectly. Second, the work itself has to be technological in nature. And this is crucial. It's got to be grounded in the hard sciences. Think engineering, computer science, biology, physics. This means that, just changing the color of a product for marketing or redesigning a logo, that's not going to count. It has to be a real technical challenge. Third, and this one is a really big deal, elimination of uncertainty. You have to be able to show that at the very start of the project, you didn't have the answer. You were genuinely unsure if it could be done, or how to do it, or what the right design would even be. Let's go back to our example. Innovatico's engineers had no idea if their new algorithm would even work on standard hardware. That uncertainty, that's exactly what the credit is looking for. And finally, there has to be a process of experimentation. So to solve that uncertainty we just talked about, you have to show you actively tried things. This means you looked at different options, maybe you built prototypes, ran simulations, or did some really methodical testing. It's basically the scientific method, right? Trial and error apply to your technical problem. Now, it's also super important to know what doesn't qualify. The IRS is really clear here. Things like routine quality control after a product is launched, just making a cosmetic tweak for a customer, or trying to copy a competitor's product, none of that is R&D in their eyes. There's no real technical uncertainty there. Okay, so you've learned the secret handshake. You've got your qualifying projects lined up. The next question is obvious. What money can you actually count towards this? So let's talk about qualified research expenditures, or as you'll hear them called, QREs. It pretty much boils down to three main buckets. You've got the wages of the people doing the work, the supplies they used up in the process, and any money you paid to outside contractors who helped with the research. Let's look a little closer at wages, because this is almost always the biggest piece of the pie. You can include the pay for the people who are hands-on, doing the research, their direct supervisors who are guiding them, and even folks in direct support roles who are essential to getting the R&D done. Next up, supplies. This covers the cost of all the tangible stuff you used up during your experiments. Think materials to build a prototype or chemicals for a test in a lab. But here's the important catch. You can't claim big, long-term capital equipment, so a new server or a big manufacturing machine, that's out. And what about if you hire someone else to do some of the heavy lifting? A third-party contractor. For those contract research expenses, you can typically include 65% of what you paid them in your total qualified costs. All right, you've got your qualified activities, you've got your qualified costs. Now for the really fun part. Turning those numbers into an actual tax credit. And there are two main ways to do the math. So you have two choices, the regular credit method and the alternative simplified credit, or ASC. And I gotta tell you, the ASC has become incredibly popular because, well, the name says it all. It's just simpler for most companies to figure out. This table really shows the difference. See, the regular credit is 20% of your spending over this really complicated historical baseline. The SAC, on the other hand, gives you a 14% credit on your R&D spending over half of your average from the last 3 years. That much simpler baseline is exactly why the ASC is the go-to for so many companies. We are in the home stretch, but this might be the most important section of all. Because claiming the credit is one thing, but being able to defend it if an auditor comes knocking, that's another. And it all comes down to one word: documentation. I want you to burn this quote into your memory. This is the absolute golden rule. From an auditor's point of view, if you didn't write it down at the time it was happening, it might as well have never happened at all. That's what contemporaneous documentation means, and that proof from the time period is everything. But here's the good news. Your technical teams are probably already creating all the proof you need. We're talking about their design documents, test results, project plans, even their source code commits in places like Git. The real key is just gathering and organizing this stuff to back up your claim. In your documentation, it shouldn't just be some random pile of papers. It needs to tell a story for each project. A really clear story that answers 3 questions. What was the technical challenge we faced? What experiments did we run to try and solve it? And what was the outcome? A clear narrative is your absolute best defense. And that brings us to the end. We've gone over what qualifies, what costs count, and how to prove it. Studies show a huge number of eligible small and mid-sized companies never claim this credit, mostly because they just don't think they qualify. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Based on everything you just heard, is your company leaving innovation money on the table?